Like, it took, a spark or whatever to steal from other stuff or whatever to, like, get
No,
this really
no,
going.
listen, it's not a spark. It's very clearly stated as hope.
It's hope in this one.
Hope.
It's a spark in the sequels.
Hi, this is Randall here with No Market Media.
And I'm Matt. Today, Randall and I are celebrating Star Wars Day with a look back at a film that Disney made, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. It stars Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, Alan Tudyk, Ben Mendelsohn, Donnie Yen, and Wen Jiang. It's directed by Gareth Edwards, also known for the 2014 Godzilla movie and Monsters. Rogue One tells the story of the group of rebels who stole the Death Star plans and leads right into the events of A New Hope. It had a $200 to $265 million budget and earned more than $1 billion worldwide. It's been well received by both critics and audiences and was nominated for 2 Academy Awards for visual effects and sound mixing. It has also led to a prequel spin-off series Andor coming soon to Disney+.
So I remember when I first watched this in theaters and I thought to myself, man, the beginning's really kind of a mess, like with all the planet hopping that goes on. Rewatching it hasn't fixed that. Okay? Like, even knowing some of these things, it's just there for serious deep lore Star Wars fans. Ooh, that's that planet. Ooh, that's that planet. And I still think it's disjointed at the start of the movie. It's like, jump to this planet. Now we go to this planet. Now we're doing a time jump. Now and I'm like, okay, get past that. Even on rewatching, it's still a mess. I still just genuinely enjoy watching the film. I just think they did such a good job in this movie of giving us something new and fresh, but making it feel like it fit in the actual time period that Star Wars, the original trilogy came out in. This movie looks and feels right for when it takes place.
Yeah, I like this movie. This is actually one of my favorite Disney-era Star Wars film. I'm not saying it's one of the best, but
no,
it's one of my favorites.
It's one of the best. It's not even close.
Like you said, my main thing that I like about this film is the fact that it is something different, but still feels Star Wars, still feels like it fits with Star Wars, and, tells a story within the Star Wars world that doesn't feel alien. And, Randall, we get quite a bit of Star Wars in our Star Wars in this one.
Yeah, crazy. It's weird how that works. Gonna talk about that again next week when we talk about Picard. Be nice to have a little bit of Star in the track.
In the track. Okay, with the story of this one, like I was mentioning how it's a little bit different than some of the other Star Wars movies a bit that we've seen. This one, I think the story takes a more look at, hey, our little soldiers and stuff. Like, instead of looking at, like, our main group of heroes, we're going to have more, like, ground level soldiers and, like, how their impact is on, like, this bigger war and stuff that we have going on.
The story for me, what I like about it is that Gareth Edwards, he just took this, like, I wouldn't say risk. At the time, it might have felt risky, where he's like, we're going to kill off all of the main characters in the story. As I was rewatching it, especially, I got this feeling of, like, Halo Reach. As things get more and more desperate, this main character dies. This main character dies. This main character dies. As things get more and more desperate as the story goes on, just how overpowering the Emperor and the Empire in general was at the time that Star Wars A New Hope takes place is interesting to see. Like, they're just close to not getting the plans out. They're this close every single time to failing, and they just somehow are able to squeak, to the next thing. I think at the time that plot was probably pretty risky. As like, we were gonna invest all this time and money into these characters and then kill them off.
Yep.
But it was totally worth it because that's what served the story. It needed to happen. Like, otherwise, where are all these important people later?
Well, I like, too, on going on the flip side of that, we do have some inclusion of some of our main line characters, but this isn't really about them. It's one of those things like we talk about some of the different Marvel shows or movies and stuff too. It's like, well, where are the Avengers in this? Because the Avengers exist during this time and stuff, and something on this grand scale would get the attention of like the Avengers stuff. Where this we have, like Darth Vader and like Princess Leia
and Tarkin
and stuff, but they're not the big focus of this film. They're just showing that yes, they're in this world and they're reacting to the events of the story.
Very important, that part. Reacting to the events of the story.
Yep.
They make sense. I guess that's the biggest thing. Not to get too drawn into the characters, which is next anyways, but they make sense in the story. They're not just shoehorned in for the purposes of, we got to get Darth Vader in there. Looking at you, entire Boba Fett series. Let's get these people in. Well, no, I mean, the story that's being told about the Death Star, about getting these plans, it makes sense that you brought in Tarkin. It makes sense that you brought in Darth Vader for these spots. They make sense in those particular spots of the story.
And with the story, I like that this ends right where A New Hope begins. Like, like you said, we set up those three characters to be right where that other movie where A New Hope picks up.
Not to talk too much about legacy characters, about all of those characters that are big and important, like the Darth Vaders, the Tarkins, and everything. But this film came out and it has this whole new cast. You know, you have Jyn Erso and her dad, Galen Erso, and the two defenders of the wills, basically, which no one knows about except for deep Star Wars fans. We're just like, what does that mean? It doesn't matter.
George Lucas wanted to do a whole movie on that.
Whole trilogy.
That's what the sequels were gonna be.
Nope. Not that Disney did any better. But all of these interesting characters, and then gotta have a lovable droid, and so they made K2, and he's a way less annoying version of C-3PO. He's sarcastic and witty, not just annoying.
I really don't see how that is going to help. Surrender is a perfectly acceptable alternative in extreme circumstances. The Empire may be gracious enough.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to start with K2 since we're there. It's kind of interesting because he is a bit of like the comic relief in that. Because you can get a little with Star Wars, like you said, the other droids. But at the same time, too, this movie is a bit more serious. So they didn't want to have like K2 go off the rails kind of thing and be like a Jar Jar Binks or something like that, because it would completely like change the tone of the movie.
Already gotta mention that.
But yeah, for that, but our main characters, I thought our main characters were pretty good, especially Jyn Erso. I at least cared for the range of feelings I'd say that she was going through this film, because I think it was like pretty dynamic. I mean, she definitely has highs and lows, and I think she's pretty well established character. And our other main character, Cassian Andor, he's definitely a different approach, look at the rebellion, I would say, and some of the not so shiny parts of the rebellion.
Yeah, and I on purpose left Cassian out of my conglomeration of all the other things, because he's a character. I mean, granted, there's a reason they're gonna there's a show around him. He's a character that shows a side of Star Wars that's not shown very often, honestly. The smaller people involved in just what it takes to run a rebellion, or what it takes to run an empire for that matter, are always really interesting. It's like that old episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, Lower Decks, where why does that episode resonate so much? Well, these are the ensigns, the lower deck people that keep everything running, that aren't the shiny, main bridge officers. Cassian's that character for Star Wars, especially in Rogue One, showing that the rebels and the Alliance are not squeaky clean. That they've had to do things, and they've had, they're killing people on the regular. To meet their goals. The kind of stuff that doesn't get told in children's programming like Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars Clone Wars. I mean, Clone Wars gets darker near the end, no doubt. But where it's just like, oh, they're just droids. Like, no, not just droids.
Not just droids.
Cassian's there, and it's like people, real people are dying, and it's him that's doing the killing.
Yep. And sticking on that topic, I think one character that goes on to that part that they actually took from Clone Wars and stuff, Saw Gerrera. I think that's interesting because, as in the cartoon, he's shown as someone who has, like, his moral compass is kind of skewed or whatever.
Extremist.
Granted, we don't really see that a lot until, like, Rebels and stuff. There's not as much of that in, like, Clone Wars and stuff when he's younger. But I like how, that goes really tonally with that Cassian Andor character and stuff, too, having, Saw Gerrera as kind of like a bridge between, like, the animated stuff in this movie.
Yeah, but it's funny, like there's that good dynamic between Saw, who's an extremist,
Yep,
like straight up, and Cassian, who's just trying to do his best for and on the behalf of the rebellion,
yep,
but does have a moral compass.
Mhm.
He's not been polluted the way Saw has been polluted through 20 years of raging against the Empire.
Yep.
Because they make a really big point of it in the movie. His character chooses not to shoot Galen.
Yep.
He's not just a cold-blooded killer. He's just able to do what needs to be done.
Right.
When it needs to be done, but is not afraid to say, no, this is wrong.
Mm-hmm. I love that too because it shows conflict in his character, and also as like Jin, who was basically raised by Saw, being part of like that conscious, like pushing that, like, hey, you don't need to follow orders when you know they're bad orders.
Orders? When you know they're wrong? You might as well be a stormtrooper.
Speaking of Saw, I think that especially if you didn't watch Rebels, especially the first time I had watched Rogue One when it came out in theaters, I hadn't seen Rebels yet because I had only just really finally gotten through Rebels. And I was super disappointed by Saw's character. I was like, why get Forrest Whitaker to play this weirdo, basically? And I could see if you're not into Star Wars, how that you're just like, I don't understand this character, I could understand that.
Me, I was one of those people going in, I was excited, like, ooh, Forrest Whitaker! And playing Saw, I was real excited for that.
Yeah. And then they, Bryan Cranston's Godzilla him.
Yeah, they did. It's true. It's true. Before we move on, one character I do want to mention, Krennic, kind of I wouldn't say different bad guy. He's his normal, like, I'm in it for the power and recognition.
Yeah. Krennic is an interesting, like, they knew, similar to the Heroes, where this character can't survive past this, He's not really the designer, but like the head of the Star Destroyer, not Star Destroyer. That's completely wrong. Don't vilify me. The Death Star plan, like, organization, getting everything building. He's the manager, basically, which I guess is like a canon change because for at least in the EU it was called Tarkin's Folly. For the longest time it was like Tarkin's the person that's doing this. To bring in Krennic was just a necessary evil because Tarkin, they CGI'd enough of him. They didn't need him doing everything. And they can't have Tarkin fail. So.
Well, and like we have too, like at the end of Revenge of the Sith, it is Tarkin that's there overseeing, with the Emperor and Vader of the Death Star construction. So, yeah, like you said, a little bit added there with Director Krennic. Alright, so Star Wars generally is space opera. And, with this film, I think it follows very similar beats as kind of like A New Hope in some ways and also Return of the Jedi. But I think this movie is kind of more focused on like war and like war drama. So I think of the Star Wars films, I think that's what I see it more as. It's kind of like a war drama film.
I mean, to me, it's a Star Wars film. And I mean that in like the science fiction sense of Star Wars, not necessarily like the Jedi and the Force and all that jazz. It's just, it sets out to be and feel like a Star Wars film, and it accomplishes that. We have space battles.
Yep.
We have a really neat ground battle, which we haven't really seen a great one since Return of the Jedi, honestly. Unless you're watching Clone Wars and stuff like that. But like in the movies, even because episode 2 is so bad, even that one, you're just like, it's just CGI people fighting CGI people. Like this is actually a really nice in-your-face ground battle that you haven't seen since Return of the Jedi. It hits all of those Star Wars beats for me.
Yep.
And does a really good job of it. It's got some pretty decent characters. So for me, the genre is Star Wars.
Yep.
And there's so much Star Wars right now coming out from Disney that doesn't feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Rogue One is just genuinely a good feeling Star Wars film.
Yep. Yeah, I think a big part of it too is our story with kind of like Jin is, kind of like taking someone that's, just kind of aloof or whatever, doing their own thing, and then bringing them in to be, something, bigger or whatever by the end, or a important player or whatever in this rebellion.
I just don't know where they get. Where is that in Star Wars?
Exits are here. Anywhere.
All right, what I didn't see coming. This is, like I said, the first time I've watched Rogue One since finally sitting down and actually sitting through Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't see coming, even though I knew they were there ancillary, was all of these really awesome Rebels Easter eggs, which makes sense in the context of the time period and what's going on.
Yep.
But here's the thing. They don't ruin the movie. They're not like, hey, look at this. Hey, look at this. Hey, look at this. They're off in the periphery. You hear it over the loudspeaker. There's a lot of really subtle and well done Easter eggs that are just there for fans, not in your face, from Rebels, and it makes sense, but it does not break or get in the way of the story that Rogue One's trying to tell or the characters at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
Well, another kind of Easter egg, not just tying in with like Rebels, I liked the Easter eggs that they had where they used unused footage from A New Hope, filming A New Hope, having some of the Rebel pilots or whatever in this movie. I thought that was a nice little Easter egg touch.
I mean, it was unused until they used it in the special edition, so now is it actually unused anymore?
That's true. That's true.
But he's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Me, I don't know if there's anything I didn't see coming or whatever from this. So I was just going to touch on something that you actually mentioned in the beginning. I noticed this before, and I noticed it even more watching now, and it is like the pacing, especially at the beginning, where, like you said, it is so chopped up. It's like, next planet, next planet, next planet, next planet, which I'll give it props. At least we're not spending all of our time on a desert planet. We do spend half our time on a desert planet, but we're, not even half, a little bit.
Not even
We're
half.
spending a little bit of time or whatever on the desert planet. But just kind of like the pacing change, I guess, is what I really noticed, because we have it really rapid there, and then we have our little bit of slow up when we're on our like desert planet, Jeddah or whatever, with Saw and stuff, and then are going to get, Jalen, or getting, Jalen or so. That stuff kind of slows down a little bit, and then for like the second half of the film, we have this big battle scene, which I actually really liked, and I think that's really a lot of like the meat and enjoyment. That's where we actually get payoffs on feelings that we built up about these characters, where we actually get good deaths, I would say, kind of thing. Like I was actually invested in the characters. Noble deaths.
Deaths that make sense for the characters.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And that's that space battle. That is again a space battle that we haven't seen at this juncture, I guess, since episode 3. So it's like, say, 2005-ish. That space battle is just awesome in Rogue One. It makes sense. It's between, like, a good matching of forces and everything. And it also just so greatly explains where the Rebel fleet is and what's going on in A New Hope. Where you watch A New Hope and you're originally like, wow, they're just a ragtag bunch of rebels. And you're like, well, no, they had spent all this time building their forces and getting everything together. Here, this explains it. This is what happened to a lot of the Rebel pilots. This is what happened to a lot of the Rebel fleet, And it does it really well without feeling like it's stomping on anything in canon.
And it really shows how, the Rebel Alliance wasn't all this big, like, unified thing at the time. Like, it took, a spark or whatever to steal from other stuff or whatever to, like, get this really going.
Listen, it's not a spark. It's very clearly stated as hope.
It's hope in this one. Hope. It's a spark in the sequels.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn
The First Order down.
All right, so this is a film that I still enjoy. Like I said, I think it is one of my favorites of, the Disney era Star Wars movies and stuff. Even if it's different, it's definitely tonal different, and it doesn't have all the, I guess you would say, like happy feel good, Marvel movie-esque things. And I think that's the thing too. I don't think we're really gonna see other Star Wars films like this, because it's really the Marvel movies that make money and stuff too. I'll be interested to see how the Andor series is gonna go, since that is a spin-off of this. And it'll be interesting to see what the tone and stuff is, if they continue the tone of this movie with that. Because I like it, because it is something different, but yet still feels like Star Wars.
It's supposed to be very expensive too. Like Halo expensive. So Rogue One for me is by far the best of the Disney Star Wars. And I don't, it's not even close. I think episode 7 was super safe and super derivative of episode 4. Episodes 8 and 9 are their own things. 9 just sucks. But Rogue One was different, had different characters, had different ideas, did it in a different style, even though it felt familiar. It feels like a Star Wars film, which is kind of the entire point of a Star Wars film. I would love to see more of these kinds of stories. I think this is like why The Mandalorian works. It's not about the mainline cast. It's not trying to stamp on anything. And then you look at things like Rebels, which had to like start from scratch with a whole new like crew, and eventually brings in some mainline characters. But it's just like Rebels is fairly well received, and Clone Wars, even though Clone Wars deals with real legitimate main characters, a lot of the other characters that became just Clone Wars characters like Rex and Ahsoka and Cody's really fleshed out in there, and the Senators and stuff, non-mainline characters become the staple of the series. I'd like to see more movies, not necessarily done like Rogue One, but done with the ideas of Rogue One in the Star Wars universe. Get away from the mainline characters, tell ancillary stories, no more solos, make stories that fit inside Star Wars canon. I'd be great with it. I love it.
Randall and I, we want to know what you guys think of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some of our other reviews. We have new movie reviews, flashback movie reviews, we take a look at TV series, and we have deeper dive discussions.
And don't forget to go check us out over on Facebook. If you haven't already, we post there on Facebook what's coming up on our YouTube channel. Also, some tidbits from all of our other fandoms. If you don't have Facebook, I completely understand. Just go check out our YouTube page, because we're just uploading, on the regular. For now, I'm Randall with No Market Media. May the 4th be with you!
And I'm Matt. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.